They thought the missing chair would break me. It only built the fire I needed. I should have known the second we arrived. The atmosphere felt rehearsed. Everyone was too polished, too perfectly indifferent. My mother-in-law's birthday. Dinner was at an exclusive rooftop restaurant in Rome. Private chef, imported roses, 2 sommeliers. But what stood out wasn't the opulence. It was the one thing missing. My chair. Not a chair, my chair. There was a place setting between Sean and Julia, but no seat. I looked down. Empty. Just air. At first, I thought maybe it was a mistake. A staff oversight. I glanced at Sean, expecting confusion or a quick wave to get it fixed. Instead, he smirked. That smug, hollow chuckle of his. "Oh, babe, maybe they forgot to count you in," he said. Everyone around the table laughed politely. Nobody moved. Nobody offered to scoot over or stand. I was nothing to him in that moment, and apparently to them too. The moment burned. She cried in silence. Not that night, but years ago, when they mocked her accent behind her back, when they ridiculed her work in hospitality. This wasn't new, just louder. This was the crescendo of every quiet jab, every icy brunch, every passive dig disguised as elite etiquette. And now, they were performing it in full daylight. A chair gone, and my dignity with it, or so they thought. I didn't argue. I didn't flinch. I just stood there, my hands folded over my clutch. My silence was my answer. Sean kept sipping his wine, like nothing had happened. His mother barely acknowledged me. His sister stared at her phone. Not even the waiter made eye contact. It was a choreography of exclusion, one they'd practiced, perfected, and executed with precision. But they underestimated the woman they cornered. I excused myself calmly. "Excuse me for a moment," I said, lips tight. Sean didn't look up. Not once. I walked down the marble stairs, out the gilded doors, and into the crisp Roman night. I didn't run. I didn't cry. I just exhaled slowly, and I called my assistant back in Boston. "Cancel everything," I said. "I'll explain later." Because what they didn't know was that every reservation, every vendor, every exclusive deal, they were booked under my agency. That's when it started. Not the pain. I'd already survived worse. What started that night was the strategy. I wasn't just walking away from a chair. I was walking toward revenge, and not the screaming. Kind. Not the throwing drinks kind. The kind that ruins calendars, bankrupts egos, and exposes stories of betrayal at the exact moment they expect you to stay silent. I looked up at the stars, letting the wind cool the heat rising in my chest. They thought I wouldn't leave. That I'd beg, that I'd laugh it off to keep appearances. He thought I would stay because I'd always stayed before, out of love, out of hope, out of habit. But this wasn't love anymore. This was war, and I'd been planning it without even realizing. For years I had planned their events, fundraisers, retreats, anniversaries. I knew their preferences, allergies, hotel room numbers. I held access codes, signatures, payment authorizations. While they flaunted their power in public, I built my network behind the scenes. She planned it all, not the betrayal, but the response. The elegant, devastating response. Because the truth was, that night, they didn't forget my seat. They erased it on purpose. But by doing that, they handed me the match, and I was done playing their game. I was ready to burn the whole board. They wanted me silent, so I let my power speak louder than words. I didn't go back to the hotel that night. I checked into a quiet boutique spot tucked behind Campo de Fiori, owned by a friend, off the Caldwell radar. I sat at the desk, opened my laptop, and logged into the master planning portal. Every itinerary, every password, every payment trail. It was all under my control. They may have stolen a chair from me, but they handed me full command of their precious celebration, and they had no clue. The events had been set for months. 5 days of luxury, winery tours, private yacht brunches, live opera, spa treatments, curated shopping experiences, all arranged under my credentials, with my preferred vendors. Sean had insisted I handle it. "You're the best at what you do," he'd said, smug in his entitlement. What he really meant was, do the work so we can take the credit. Classic. He broke me first, yes, but this time I'd finish it. I didn't cancel everything at once. That would have been sloppy, emotional. I took my time, dismantling the party piece by piece, starting with the private villa in Umbria. I called the owner directly. "There's been a change in plans," I said, my voice smooth. "The Caldwell family will no longer be needing the estate." By noon, I had withdrawn the deposit and locked the calendar from being rebooked. One strike. Subtle. Then came the yacht. My contact owed me a favor. I rescheduled it under a different name for a rival family's anniversary. A poetic twist. I didn't even need to cancel the caterer. I just redirected the delivery to a children's shelter hosting a fundraiser. Revenge doesn't have to be bitter to be effective. Sometimes, it's quiet, generous, and humiliating. She planned it all, and this time, with purpose bigger than ego, the vineyard reservations vanished next, then the spa, then the helicopter tour. One by one, the dominoes fell, and no one noticed. Yet, They were too busy sipping wine, gossiping, and celebrating their exclusion. I didn't cry. I didn't panic. I executed. With the precision of a woman who knows exactly what they tried to steal and exactly how to take it back. I scheduled a message to go out to all vendors at midnight. The Caldwell family's authorization has been revoked. All pending transactions are null. I digitally signed it, attached supporting legal notes, and copied their billing department. By morning, there would be chaos. He never saw it coming. None of them did, because they thought my silence meant surrender, but it meant calculation. Then I opened a folder I'd been keeping for months. I hadn't planned on using it, not unless things truly imploded. But now, it felt right. Screenshots, voice memos, financial statements. I'd collected them casually, instinctively, as any good planner would. But now, they became something else. They became the key to everything. The truth, the exposure, the revenge they never imagined I was capable of. And through it all, I felt calm. Not cold, not numb, clear. I could feel the edges of who I used to be softening, giving way to something sharper, stronger. I was deceived, yes, but I refused to stay naive. I was learning that quiet women aren't weak. We're watchful. And when we move with impact. The irony was poetic. They thought removing my seat would make me disappear. Instead, it gave me space. Space to act, to rebuild, to strike. Not in anger, but in justice. I didn't need their acceptance anymore. I needed the truth. And by morning, the truth would start to bleed through every corner of their carefully constructed lives. They thought I was organizing a celebration. I was documenting their collapse. It started with a calendar alert, one I didn't create. A private dinner, 2 weeks before the party, labeled Final Pre-Divorce Prep. It had been accidentally synced from Sean's backup account, which I still had admin access to. I stared at it, unmoving. There it was. The betrayal wasn't just emotional, it was strategic. They weren't just trying to humiliate me. They were setting the stage for a very public, very choreographed separation. He planned it all, just not well enough. The deeper I dug, the uglier it got. Email threads between Sean and his sister. Julia revealed everything. They called me a liability, said I didn't fit the brand. Their plan was to have the lawyer serve me documents during the closing toast of the week-long celebration, in front of guests, in front of press, like a theatrical performance. I was nothing to him, not a partner, not a person, just a pawn to be removed with flair. But the affair, that shattered something else. Hidden in a folder marked tax projections, I found photos, messages, plans for a baby. Sean had been seeing a woman named Delia, an aspiring actress from Milan, for nearly a year. They'd gone on vacations I'd planned, using my airline points. He had proposed to her already, with my grandmother's diamond reset into a new band. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I took screenshots. I found the messages, and I labeled everything. Then came the finances. That's when things turned from betrayal to criminal. The Caldwell family had been bleeding money for years. Their foundation was a shell. Their properties were leveraged to the brink of foreclosure. They'd used our home, my home, as collateral for a failed vineyard acquisition in Tuscany. And worst of all, they'd hidden millions in offshore accounts, laundered through charity events I unknowingly organized. He betrayed me, yes, but worse, he implicated me. Every transaction I thought was above board wasn't. They'd used my business as a clean front. I had unknowingly signed approvals while distracted or manipulated. I could have gone down with them, but I kept records. I had backups. And now I had motive. I wasn't just hurt, I was livid, and I wasn't going to let them bury me beneath their legacy of deceit. I forwarded everything to my attorney, Mara, a firebrand from New York, who specialized in high-profile financial fraud. "We've got them," she said without hesitation, "but we'll do it on your terms." I liked that. My terms, my timing, my stage. He thought I would stay, would shrink, would disappear into shame. But he underestimated the woman who built empires out of color palettes and floral budgets. Mara looped in a forensic accountant. Within 24 hours, we had mapped every asset, every ghost account, every dirty donation. They thought they were clever, but their arrogance was their downfall. The truth came out, not in courtrooms or tabloids, but in spreadsheets, call logs, and timestamps. And I held every piece of it. By that point, I wasn't angry. I was focused. This wasn't about heartbreak anymore. This was about truth, about pulling down the curtain on a family who believed they could control narratives, women, money, and morality without consequence. She exposed him, yes, but she also exposed the rot beneath every chandelier they polished for show. So I kept gathering, quietly, meticulously, because the show wasn't over, not yet. The missing chair was just the prologue. Now, it was time for Act 1. They served me betrayal at dinner. I served them consequences for dessert. The morning after the dinner, I wore white, a crisp suit, no accessories, clean, sharp, undeniable. I walked into the restaurant's administrative office 2 hours before the family's next event and asked to speak with the general manager. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't ask for favors. I simply showed him my credentials, the authorization contracts, and proof of full payment. "I'm terminating the agreement," I said, effective immediately. He blinked. "For the Caldwell party?" I nodded. "For all of it." By noon, the vineyard had backed out. The drivers were rerouted. The yacht company was instructed to deny boarding. The hotel concierge, who owed me a favor from a Paris expo, personally removed the Caldwell's names from all reservations. Even the imported floral arrangements were redirected to a cancer fundraiser downtown. She planned it all with grace, precision, and a flair they never thought I possessed. The Caldwells arrived that evening for dinner number 2. They didn't even notice the subtle shift at first. No champagne, no music, fewer staff. But when the maitre d' handed Sean a note and quietly walked away, his smile froze. His mother asked what was wrong. "Nothing," he lied, but I watched. From across the street, iced espresso in hand, as he read the termination statement signed by me. Every line sliced through his ego. He called me 3 times. I didn't answer. Then came the texts. First confusion, then outrage, then panic. I let them pile up while I prepared my final move, because this wasn't just personal anymore. It was public, and he never saw it coming. Not from me, not in this way. They'd taken so much pride in controlling the story. Now I was holding the pen. Back in the States, I had already sent the press packet to my publicist. Not tabloids. Forbes Women, Harper's Business, The Ethicist. Outlets that understood power beyond scandal. Outlets that would tell the story of a woman reclaiming her narrative, not begging for pity. The betrayal wasn't just romantic. It was systemic. Stories of betrayal aren't always told through screams. Sometimes they're whispered through headlines. As dessert was being served, the restaurant staff began clearing plates without warning. No explanations, no cake, no champagne toast, just confusion. Then the sommelier stepped forward and said, "Apologies, but this event has been canceled. Per the lead sponsor, all services are hereby revoked." Silence fell, then chaos. Julia stood up, screaming. Sean pulled out his phone, frantic. His mother looked like she'd swallowed glass. And I walked in through the side entrance. They froze. I didn't speak right away. I walked to the table, placed a neatly bound envelope in front of Sean, and smiled. This is what happens when you mistake kindness for weakness. Inside were copies of everything. Emails, contracts, transfers, pregnancy confirmations. I found the messages, and now so had they. "You think this is revenge?" I said, tilting my head. "It's not. It's exposure. The truth doesn't need fireworks. It just needs daylight." Then I turned to the stunned room. "You excluded me to erase me, but all you did was spotlight yourselves." The truth came out, fully, publicly, and beautifully timed. As I left, the photographer they'd hired tried to stop me. "Do you still want your photo package?" she asked. I smiled. "No," I said, "but keep the files. They might need it, for court." He tried to save face. I showed him the truth and let it bury him. The messages kept coming like a storm with no forecast. "We need to talk. You've gone too far. Anna, be reasonable. You don't understand what you've done." But I did. I understood perfectly. He broke me first, and now he was just watching the pieces fly back in his direction, sharpened. He thought I would stay in the shadows, humiliated and passive, but all he saw now was his reflection in the mirror I'd placed in front of him. I responded only once. One text, one line. "Check the shared drive. Everything's labeled." He opened it. I know he did because the panic turned into silence, then begging, then blame. I'd uploaded everything. Screenshots of financial laundering, voice memos of him laughing about using my business as a cover, photos of him and Delia, the pregnant mistress, in Venice, wearing a watch I had gifted him on our anniversary. So I showed him the proof and left no room for denial. That was the shift. The moment he realized I wasn't bluffing, that I wasn't after drama, I was after dismantling. I didn't need revenge. I needed release. I needed the truth to pierce through his curated facade and strip away the empire he built on manipulation, betrayal, and charm. He never saw it coming because he thought betrayal only hurt when it was loud. Mine was quiet, professional, impeccable. His mother tried calling too. I didn't pick up. Julia sent an email threatening legal action. My lawyer sent her one back with a subject line that read, "Embezzlement review, full record attached." I wasn't just burning bridges. I was rebuilding a fortress out of every scorched stone. Their grip on their image, their finances, their status, it unraveled with a single keystroke, and then there was the baby. I hadn't planned on revealing that. But when Sean texted again, blaming me for destroying the family, I forwarded him the clinic invoice Delia had tried to hide, and the WhatsApp conversation, where she detailed how she'd been promised Anna's apartment and name, just not her. I was deceived, yes, but I'd never again be displaced from what I built. Posted a short statement the next morning. No further comment. The truth is documented. The future is mine. I didn't need hashtags, didn't need applause, just clarity. And that post, on my professional page, not my personal, got more attention than any gala I'd ever planned. Women messaged me, clients came forward, vendors applauded. Even a few of his past partners reached out with stories of their own, stories of betrayal that started to paint the real Caldwell legacy. Reputation was everything to them, until it wasn't. Until one woman walked away and told the truth, and they couldn't stop her because she didn't scream. She documented, she strategized, she exposed him, and in doing so, reminded every woman watching that silence doesn't mean surrender. Sometimes, it's the setup. I never threatened, never slandered. I didn't have to. The facts were loud enough. My silence before had been misread as submission. Now my silence was my answer to every demand, excuse, and desperate apology. The funny thing is, they tried to erase me from their table. Now I own the whole banquet hall, and they're still knocking at the door. They closed a door on me in Rome, so I built an empire in Boston. The flight back was quiet, and for the first time in a long while, so was my mind. No racing thoughts, no bargaining, no what-ifs, just a crisp folder on my lap, divorce documents, printed, notarized, ready to go. I didn't even need music to drown the silence. The calm was earned. I wasn't leaving Rome in defeat. I was returning to Boston in full command. And that shift, that was everything. First stop, my office. Not home. Not a hotel. My company had always been my sanctuary, the one place that wasn't touched by Sean's shadows. I walked in, greeted my team, and handed the front desk assistant a USB labeled Caldwell Closure. Back up everything, I said. Then archive. We're done with them. Just like that. I cut the cord. I didn't flinch. I met with my lawyer that same afternoon. We filed the papers, locked the assets, and restructured ownership. What used to be ours was now mine, legally and publicly. The apartment, the shares, even the corporate account Sean tried to dip into post-exposure. We froze everything. He touched. She planned it all. And now every safeguard was falling into place. Then came the ripple effect. Boston's event scene is tighter than it looks. Whispers travel faster than emails. And suddenly, clients who'd once been hesitant were calling me, not to gossip, but to offer support. "We heard what happened," they said. "You handled it with grace. We trust you more than ever." I didn't expect that, but it reminded me, reputation isn't just about what happens. It's about how you respond. My business boomed, my calendar filled, not with lavish celebrations for the shallow elite, but with grounded, powerful projects led by people who respected integrity. I turned down 3 interviews and 1 exclusive exposé deal, not out of fear, but because I didn't need validation through spectacle. My silence was my answer. The work spoke for itself. Sean tried to call, multiple times, left voice notes, sent emails with subject lines like closure and one last conversation. I never responded. What was there to say? He begged her to come back. But that version of me no longer existed. The one who made excuses. The one who laughed off micro-humiliations. The one who made room at tables she wasn't welcome at. She finally left. The Caldwells began to collapse, slowly, publicly. Julia's charges went from whispers to warrants. Their family business lost investors after the offshore files leaked. Their gala was canceled due to unforeseen circumstances, but everyone knew the truth. The truth came out, and I didn't have to shout it. I just had to stop protecting it. I bought a new place, smaller, brighter mine. Every detail was intentional. No dark corners, no locked drawers. A space built on light and decisions I didn't have to apologize for. There was no dramatic reinvention, just small, powerful reclamations. 1 room, 1 contract, 1 morning at a time. Freedom isn't always loud. Sometimes it's the quiet realization that you don't owe anyone a reaction, just results. And mine were just beginning to unfold. They thought silence could be bought. I let them learn the cost of integrity. The envelope was thick, hand-delivered by a discreet courier in a tailored suit. No name, no note, just a check and a confidentiality agreement. They really thought this would work, that I'd see the zeros and forget the nights I spent crying behind locked bathroom doors, that I'd exchange my dignity for their convenience. But I knew better. I was nothing to him, and this was just another transaction, another attempt to control the narrative with a payout. I handed the envelope to my attorney without even opening it. Decline. Firmly. Document it. She nodded. No questions. We both understood the game. These people didn't want peace. They wanted silence. They weren't sorry. They were scared. Scared of what would happen if the truth came out any further. But that truth, it was already moving, quietly, powerfully, and on my terms. Within 24 hours, another offer came in, this time cloaked in legal jargon, NDAs, sealed records, mutual protection. I laughed out loud reading it. There was nothing mutual about what they'd done. He broke me first, and now they wanted to pretend none of it happened? Not a chance. I didn't fight for freedom just to rent it out later in exchange for a non-disclosure clause. What they didn't understand was that I had already won, not because I destroyed them, but because I walked away with my soul intact. Betrayal can either rot you or refine you. I chose refinement. Every decision I made from that point forward came from clarity, not vengeance. Every no I said was a yes to myself. My silence was my answer, not a submission, but a statement. I started consulting for women-owned businesses shortly after, not just about events, but about contracts, asset protection, emotional boundary setting, things we're never taught until it's too late. My story wasn't just mine anymore. It was a blueprint, a quiet revolution whispered in conference rooms, coffee shops, and survivor forums. The more I told it, the more women stepped forward with stories of betrayal that mirrored mine. Some were darker, some were quieter, but all of them carried that same look in their eyes, that flicker of power returning, that moment when they realized they could rewrite their own ending, not with fury, but with facts, strategy, and self-respect. Sean's team sent one last letter, final opportunity to settle privately and avoid further reputational damage. That one, I framed, not to gloat, but to remember that he thought I would stay, compliant and grateful for scraps. Instead, I built something they couldn't touch, a name backed by principle, a brand backed by grit, a life backed by choice. People often ask me, don't you wish you'd taken the money? No, because there's no price tag for peace, no payout that matches the feeling of waking up knowing I stood up for myself. She finally left, yes, but not in shame, in power. And that power, it's not loud, it's not pretty, but it's mine, and it's permanent. The seat they pulled away became the platform I now stand on. 1 year later, I stood in the very same city where it all imploded, but this time, I wasn't a guest waiting for a seat. I was the host, the architect, the name behind every detail of the most anticipated event of the season. A luxury charity gala at the Palazzo Verde, invitations designed in-house, staff trained by my company, clients handpicked. There wasn't a Caldwell in sight, just elegance, intention, and my name engraved at the top of the night's program. Arrived early, walked the marble floors alone, and took a moment in the ballroom where everything had changed. The room felt familiar but not haunting. There was no sting, just perspective, growth. I was deceived, yes, but I refused to let their deception become my identity. I inhaled deeply and smiled. This wasn't revenge. This was redemption. People kept asking if I'd invite anyone from the past. I didn't. Not out of bitterness, but clarity. You don't reopen doors you've reinforced with stone. Nobody believed her back then. Not fully. But now, my name was synonymous with precision, power, and grace under fire. They didn't need to believe me. They only needed to watch. And they had. The press took photos, praised the decor, the food, the atmosphere. But what they didn't capture was what mattered most. The silence I reclaimed. The dignity I walked in with. The voice I found in the aftermath. That missing chair, it was never meant for me. It was a warning, a moment that told me, you don't belong here. And they were right. I belonged somewhere bigger. As the night unfolded, I found myself laughing, real laughter, from the gut. Nothing hollow, nothing staged. Surrounded by people who respected me not for who I was attached to, but for what I had built. For how I stood after falling. For how I told my story without shame or softness. A young planner came up to me during the event. She whispered, I followed your journey. I just left a toxic contract because of you. That moment nearly undid me, because that was the point, wasn't it? Not just to survive, but to signal to others that survival was possible, that revenge could look like a life well lived. Later that night, as I reviewed final notes with my team, someone pointed out an extra seat at one of the VIP tables. Should we remove it? They asked. I shook my head. No, I said. Leave it. It's a reminder. They didn't need to know what it meant, but I did. That chair was for the girl who was once excluded. She cried in silence, but tonight, she was celebrated, because what they meant as an erasure became a redirection, a catalyst, a rebirth. And standing there, in my own spotlight, I finally understood. He never saw it coming, but I always knew where I was going.